What's up, everybody? Gerard here, as always, with your 3T Podcast Universal YouTube channel. Yes, we are back on YouTube after a lengthy hiatus. Sorry about that. We were kind of trying to reinvent this channel and give you guys fresh content instead of this all reviews on Raw and SmackDown, NXT, and AEW. Speaking of NXT, and speaking of AEW, and just speaking about promotions in general, don't we always fantasy book promotions? Like, what would I do if I was running NXT, or if I was running AEW, or Raw, or SmackDown, or New Japan, right? It's an idea that wrestling fans have talked about for millennials. Not millennials, millenniums. Whoops. But it's something that we've all talked about. So we're going to kick this idea off, kick this topic off with 10 things. Yes, 10 things we would change about NXT. I know a lot of people believe that NXT is a flawless brand, so to speak. TakeOver Portland was amazing. NXT Weekly is pretty solid most weeks. So a lot of people will be like, what's there really to change? Right? And I'm going to put these ideas into your head, show you what I think would even elevate NXT to another stratosphere, so to speak. Number 10, I would add a secondary title to NXT UK. NXT UK is kind of a niche brand. You have to really enjoy the UK style of wrestling to really get into NXT UK. But NXT UK takeovers have been pretty solid. The main events have been fantastic. But it still looks like a niche brand because they don't have a secondary title. So it's all these guys, what are they fighting for other than trying to fight Walter or whoever's the United Kingdom champion? So when you add a secondary title, it gives the middle card guys another title to fight for, adds another title to build takeovers around. You got guys like Mastiff and Jordan Devlin when he wasn't in the title picture, or Trent Seven, who fit perfectly into a mid-card title range. Let's do that. Add a mid-card title to really elevate the brand. Number 9 is another NXT UK idea. I would, like I said, with 10, have the mid-card title and then build the titles around Imperium. I think they've kind of dropped the ball a little bit with Imperium in the tag team division on NXT UK. They're kind of a featured act, but they don't put the belts on them yet. I think they don't want it to be like Undisputed Era Part 2, but if you look, Undisputed Era got really over really fast as this dominant faction. Dominant factions have sold across all wrestling promotions since the start of wrestling promotions. You have the Four Horsemen, DX, etc. NXT UK needs a strong faction to start it off. You know, they already have Imperium's a pretty good faction as it is. You have Gallus, which is another solid faction. If you put titles on these guys, it adds a lot more importance to what they're doing. Now we got from NXT UK into the next part of NXT, which is kind of not really a part of NXT. It's kind of weirdly affiliated. Number 8 here is assimilating 205 Live and NXT even further. Because if you watch 205 Live, there's a lot of guys who were never on NXT. The Brian Kendricks, the Jack Gallaghers, the Ariara Davares of the world, who are 205 Live originals, and they're on 205 Live every week. And then you have the guys who are on both shows who are still on NXT, like Swerve, Garza, etc., right? You're having a cruiserweight division, the NXT cruiserweight division, but most of your division's on 205 Live, and they're not appearing. If you further assimilate these brands and call it NXT 205 Live, it adds a third brand to NXT, a third brand to NXT, and it helps legitimize that title, and then you can always add other titles into that if you really want to do that. Now, we're going to continue on that thought with number 7. Number 7, it would be moving 205 Live to Full Sail University here. I think that's the home of what NXT is. That's the nucleus, the home of NXT, similar to what the Garden was for WWE/F in its early incarnations. It's important, right? And I think the crowd is a lot hotter than the crowd that's already sat through a 2-hour SmackDown or a 3-hour Raw or whatever they're taping 205 Live on, right? So when you're doing that, you add you add further brand assimilation. You build around both sides of your roster for 205 Live. And then you have a hot crowd that's into what you're doing because they're paying to see you. They're not paying to see Bray Wyatt on SmackDown. You know, they're paying to see the Cruiserweight division. Number 6 is adding Yujiro Kushida to the Cruiserweight division full-time. He's kind of underutilized on NXT. I don't remember the last time he's even won a match, honestly. They flopped on the time splitters for whatever reason. I totally disagree with that. I thought that was probably the the most exciting thing that they've done with Kushida in a long time, and the crowd was into it. But they kind of dropped the ball on it. I don't know if that's because they don't think Alex Shelley could go on a schedule with them, or I don't know. But Kushida's a very underutilized talent. He's fantastic in the ring, one of the best workers in New Japan for years, the ace of their junior division. You're signing the ace of a cruiserweight division, and then you're trying to put him in a heavyweight division. And while he's had great matches with Cole and Walter, it's clear that they're not planning on him being a focal point on the brand. So instead of this letting him sit there and have these great matches and doing nothing with it, put him in the cruiserweight division, build the cruiserweight division around him, and let him elevate that brand, because I really believe he is good enough to elevate a brand on his own accord. Number 5. Number 5 will be more homegrown talent being featured. If you watch TakeOver Portland during the Tegan Knox Dakota Kai match, Raquel Gonzalez, I think her last name is Gonzalez, I think that's what they're going with, came out and interfered. The crowd's like, who is she? Who is she? Right? It should have been Mercedes Martinez. It should have been so-and-so. No, let's use some homegrown talent. You have a whole lineage, a whole roster of people that's sitting in the Performance Center every week, every day training, busting their asses to hope to get on TV. And then they don't put them on TV because they're focused on bringing in talent from the indie scenes or the international scenes. You're signing and accumulating all this young talent that you're training in your own system, and then you're not using it. So is your system really working? That's the real question, right? Number 4. To continue on that point, I would be adding new tournaments, similar to how they do the Dusty Classic, and I think they had the Breakout Tournament, which ACH won. But this one will be totally different. This will be similar to what Ring of Honor does with their Top Prospect Tournament. This will be a tournament that's, you could tape it in the Performance Center. It doesn't have to be put in front of a big crowd or whatever. But people who haven't debuted on NXT yet, who are straight from the Performance Center, homegrown talents only, who've never wrestled in another promotion before. Call it the NXT Futures Tournament or something like that, or Rising Star Tournament, where it's just people from the Performance Center who are homegrown guys and girls. You can do a women's side and a men's side. You got 2 tournaments, actually. That's even better. And you really get to see which people are really working harder in NXT. And it gives something for the people in the Performance Center to strive for, to be included in this yearly tournament. Number 3. Number 3 is another interesting one. It would be further inclusion with the main roster regarding the women's division. The women's tag titles are kind of in limbo at all times or whatever. Asuka's kind of in a solo act, even though she's part of the women's tag team championship with Kairi Sane. I would like to see the women's tag team titles brought on NXT more often, and I think that'll elevate that title more, because there's more women's tag teams on NXT than there is on Raw and SmackDown. Number 2 is another interesting one. It will be to broaden out their roster a little bit and stay away from stuff that's already been done. And I think that's kind of done with the Undisputed Era at this point. I don't know. I'm not going to say they're stale, because they're very entertaining at this point still. But if you watch the Ciampa match, it was literally laid out essentially the same way as the Gargano-Cole match was. And I don't know if that was done on purpose due to the turn at the end with Johnny Gargano turning heel. But I kind of feel like they're treading tires a little bit. They know these guys are really talented, and they're over to a point that they're getting kind of complacent with the Undisputed Era. And to Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano also. I think they're very complacent knowing this rivalry is going to be a hot rivalry no matter what. And they could always go back to it. Like they went back to it on TakeOver Portland. This is probably going to spread out to another trilogy, I'm guessing, with Gargano and Ciampa. I don't think it's going to be a one-off at TakeOver Tampa. I think this is going to be another spread out, branching storyline, which is great. It's going to be great matches, but there's a complacency with the NXT product right now. And it's not stagnant, it's not stale, but it's getting there. Because we've seen Cole and them do this kind of style match all the time. We've kind of seen what Ciampa and Gargano can do. And the Gargano thing is still kind of fresh in their minds. That feud is still very... There's stuff there that they can do with it. I think they should have waited this a little bit longer. Maybe started at TakeOver Tampa or something. I think it's a little bit too soon because Ciampa's still getting back from his neck injury, and I think it's kind of very fresh in their minds. So complacency is a big thing that's happening on NXT, so I would want to see fresher matchups with it, fresher feuds for all of those guys. I think Undisputed needs something fresh, and the match layout for Adam Cole title matches has to be more than 25 minutes of them going at it, and then Undisputed doing their run-ins. Now, number one here. I think number one is very interesting. This is more of a what I would do if I was running NXT opposed to what I think they're going to do. I would build around Keith Lee. I think Keith Lee should be the face of NXT right now for a multitude of reasons. One, he has a unique look. Two, his work rate. If you're into the whole work rate thing, for a big guy, he's arguably one of the best big guys in the business right now. Three, he has an aura about him, which you can't really teach, and it's something that just happens with the crowd where there's an aura about him when that guy comes out. Like when Undertaker comes out, there's an aura. When Daniel Bryan comes out, there's just something about them that draws people in. Keith Lee has that aura to him. To prove that point, watch Survivor Series, and watch the build-up to Survivor Series. Anytime he was in the ring with anybody, the crowd percolated up. They perked up. They got excited about it. Then watch the Royal Rumble. That's two big instances when they put him with big names that should dwarf him, right? Because it's Roman Reigns, it's Seth Rollins, it's Brock Lesnar, it's Braun Strowman. These are big names to the main roster fans. And they're like, oh shit, who is that guy? Like, wow, this is big. Like, this is going to be great. And that's not just NXT fans who are watching Survivor Series or watching the Royal Rumble and popping for this. This is main roster audience who might not be accustomed to Keith Lee. Right? And this further proves my second point, which was number two, about them being kind of complacent with the Undisputed Era and Gargano and Ciampa. It's easy to latch onto them and keep them in those spots because they're already established names and they already have a certain amount of appeal to them. But what are they really doing to elevate NXT up even more? You know, they've elevated it up to here, but they got to get up to here now. And I think Keith Lee could be that guy. And I think he could be a star in the main roster right now. If they put him in the main roster, he would be a star. But so he has a star appeal, aura, work rate, look. He's different. When he's in the ring, it's exciting because you're seeing stuff from a guy who shouldn't be doing what he's doing. And that's the appeal to Keith Lee, is that he's this big guy who could move and he's fantastic. And I think he's someone they should build around. If it was me, he drops the North American title, similar to what TNA did with the X Division title, where it's like, okay, I'll put the belt down and challenge for that belt. Similar, I think that would work well with his gimmick. You know, I'm willing to put this title on the line, drop this title to get that title, because that title is the biggest belt, right? And I want to be the biggest star in NXT, Cole. So if I put this belt down, I get this title shot. And then you build two takeover matches just off that, because you have Takeover Tampa, and you could do a tournament building into it for the vacant North American title, or you do a 6-man ladder match or something big like that, and then you have the main event of Lee versus Cole for the NXT title, which would be a fantastic main event. Fresh matchup, because it's not Cole working with someone who's very similar build to him and similar size. I think it'll be a very fresh matchup, and I think Keith Lee should be NXT champion right now. Over Cole, over Gargano, over Ciampa. Right now, I think he's the biggest star in NXT, and it's not even close at this point. At least in my eyes, from what I'm seeing, more than just watching NXT. If you watch his inclusions on the main roster, he's more over than Adam Cole was on the main roster. That's it for our top 10, right? Let me know in the comments below what your top 10 things you would change about NXT. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you disagree? Do you think my ideas are stupid? Do you love my ideas? Let me know. Now, some other things here. We're looking for collaborations, sponsors, all of that for our podcast. If you want to be on an episode with us, reach out to us with an idea. We're always looking for ideas. And another thing is, we're looking for more people who might be into editing the podcast or maybe posting videos on this channel. If you're interested in working with 3T Podcast, contact us either on here, on Instagram at Through the Table, or at iStrongStyle. Or if you want to message us, email us your editing resume or your videos or something you want or an idea, you can email us at 3tpodcast@gmail.com. That's the letter THREETPODCAST You can also buy this t-shirt and our logo t-shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees. We're on the WrestlePost app, biggest directory for professional wrestling, from indies, from wrestlers, from podcasts, from everything. It's on there. Check them out. It's a free app everywhere. Also, speaking of something that's everywhere, our podcast is on all platforms. Apple, Google Play, Tuneinradio, Spotify. I don't know if you guys know, we have a new episode that's out right now. It's Fantasy Booking, NXT versus AEW Super Show, from the arena, from this build-up to this fantasy card. It's in a multiverse where these companies work together, right? That's the premise. What would the card be? Who's your main event? Who's winning your matches? What's the storylines going in and after the fact? Check it out. It's on all platforms. It's arguably our best episode yet. The reviews for it have been fantastic. You should listen to it. That is not me as the co-host of the podcast telling you you should listen to it. The viewers are listening to it, so should you. Now that's all for this installment of the 3T Podcast official YouTube channel. Tune in next week for another installment of our top 10 things we would change about insert company here. See ya.